A moment nearly 50 years in the making finally took place in the City of Lights today. Artist, activist, and spy Josephine Baker received one of the highest honors in France. ABC's Ibtissem Guenfoud was in Paris for the event.
Tonight, a historic moment in Paris. 46 years after her death, Josephine Baker's voice echoes through the city, posthumously receiving one of France's highest honors. Being added to the Pantheon is reserved for France's national heroes, and Baker is the first person born in the U.S. to be interred there. Baker was a star of the silver screen in Europe, a dancer, and civil rights activist. But secretly, she was a spy for the French resistance during World War II, performing across Nazi-occupied Europe, hiding messages on her music sheets, and sharing them with the British.
She was generous, and she was a very idealist woman and person.
Born at the turn of the century, the young woman from St. Louis, Missouri, became an icon of the Roaring '20s. She was only 19 years old when her manager convinced her to make the journey across the Atlantic.
Picture it, the lights dimming, the crowds clapping in eagerness when a young Josephine Baker enters the stage for the first time. This was 96 years ago here in Paris in this very theater, and the show became legendary.
But for some, choosing Baker to be in the Pantheon raises concerns over representation of Black people in France.
It's true, she had an amazing life. She was really brave at some point. She was committed to a lot of really righteous causes, right? But at the same time, her name comes up whenever we want to have whenever we're having a conversation about racism in France. In the 1920s, the 1930s, she was embracing some colonial stereotypes, like the banana skirt, for instance, and it created some type of stereotypes that affected Black people in France.
Kevidona organizes Black Paris walks for tourists and locals. He says his tours on the Black history in the City of Lights have never been so popular.
Paris and France in general are very, very popular with tourists in general. So there were lots of people coming to Paris for the very first time, and they were surprised with diversity in Paris. Questions about why are there so many Black people here? Why there are so many people of color?
Paris was once a haven for Black American artists fleeing segregation. But some argue Baker's story and success should not gloss over the endemic racism. Amid calls to end discrimination in France, Black Lives Matter banners also turning up in French protests.
After the death of George Floyd and a lot of difficult conversations we're also having in France about police brutality, inequality, all of these questions.
Dona says a lot of people who take his tours are surprised to see so much Black influence in Paris. But France has a long colonial past, and its culture is rich with influences that stretch across Africa to the Caribbean islands.
Where are the other Black people buried there?
Yes, so there are. So I told you the oldest one is Alexandre Dumas. Because if it was up to me, there would be like 10 other Black people at least. But Paris is part of the Black world, is part of the Black Atlantic. There's been lots of connections for a very long time through colonialism with different parts of the world.
And it's not just Josephine Baker who's left an impression. Many Black American artists, from James Baldwin to Nina Simone, have made their mark on French culture.
Everybody wants to come here to perform.
And why do you think that is?
Paris, for the culture, is very important. For the music, of course, but for the painters, for the writers. It's like New York, but after New York.
And for Black Americans who decided to make Paris home, like Tiffany Davis, an important part of their history.
Paris in so many ways is a part of African American history. It's been really cool to see how many African American creatives who came here, from Langston Hughes to James Baldwin, who sat at Café de Flore and wrote Go Tell It on the Mountain, to, I know Nina Simone lived here for a little bit, Josephine Baker, and for me, it's just really cool to walk the streets of, so many African American creatives who came before me.
Today, Josephine Baker is the first Black woman to have her legacy inked in the Pantheon. dedicated to individuals who've made their mark on the history of France. She's seen as a hero of World War II.
It was a very great pleasure to know that my mother would enter in this historical place.
The French army now also making the original archives of Baker's war efforts available to the public. For Brian, Baker's adopted son, this is a precious gift.
So when you watch a document and who are the real document, historical document, it's a strange feeling.
French President Emmanuel Macron even calls Baker the incarnation of the French spirit. And tonight, also remarking that Baker was a member of the LGBTQ community, something she has been celebrated for in recent years.
Aux côtés d'un homme, une nuit, au bras d'une femme, une autre, elle qui a deux amours.
A coffin carrying soil from the US, France, and Monaco, where Baker is buried, and all her medals brought to the French Pantheon, cementing her place in France's history. Ibtissem Guenfoud for ABC News in Paris, France.
Recognition of historic proportions there are thanks to Ibtissem.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.